Hey guys, welcome. That time again. Sport and short sorts. Boy Ran City, doing it like we always do, coming at it with Jersey names. And 61's an interesting one, so let's hop right to it. So, to start the 61 mentions, we'll start in the NFL, like we have with these last few here, and we'll start with linebacker Bill George. He would attend Wake Forest and play for the Demon Deacons, becoming the first All-American football player in team history, and was a three-time selection to the All-Southern Conference. That's when they played there. They're now part of the ACC. But Wake Forest didn't have a wrestling team, and Bill George was quite prolific at it, so much that he entered the South Conference tournament as an individual competitor without a team and won on three different occasions at heavyweight. It was an amazing time at college during him the induction into the Wake Forest Hall of Fame. And I know we're celebrating 61, but George wore 47 in college, and his number is retired there. That led to the Bears drafting George in the second round of the 1951 draft. Yeah, that's a bit ago, where he played the middle guard, which was the standard in a five-man defensive front, which was the thing to do at the time. But his style of play led to him playing behind the defensive line, which was really being credited with being the first true middle linebacker in football history and the creation of the 4-3 defense. And Bill George was a beast on a very impressive Chicago Bears defense. We've highlighted a lot of players from that team. And he helped the Bears win the 1963 NFL championship over the Giants. He was an 8 first-team All-Pro selection, 8 Pro Bowl selections. He was named to the 1950s All-Decade team. He was named one of the 100 greatest Bears. His 61 is one of 14 retired jerseys by the franchise. His fantastic play led him to getting inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Unfortunately, though, he would pass away at the age of 52. He was involved in an automobile accident and passed away from it. But the Bears have such a great, impressive list of defensive players, and Bill George is part of that list. Very underrated. Next 61 on our list brought a bit of a predicament. His best collective years were probably wearing 61, but his most productive single season came in at number 78. But we'll honor the 61 here. Curly Culp, stout defensive tackle, played college football at Arizona State, where he was a first-team All-American playing for the Sun Devils. But much like I mentioned with Bill George, he was a great wrestler, going 84-11-1 throughout college, and was the 1967 NCAA heavyweight champion, winning the Gorian Award for scoring the most pins in the NCAA Div 1 wrestling championship. So you know he'd be a handful in the trenches on the line. He fell to the second round of the 68 draft, where the Broncos selected him, but they thought he was just too small for defensive line at 6'1", 265. So the Broncos tried him on the offensive line, but didn't work. He was traded to the Chiefs, where he'd play on the defensive line to great success. He was used as a nose tackle and helped popularize the 3-4 scheme in the 70s, which was more used in the college than the pros. And while in KC, Curly Culp would make second-team All-Pro and 2 Pro Bowls, and was part of the 1969 team that won the AFL championship, earning a spot in Super Bowl IV, where the Chiefs beat up on the Vikings to win the 4th ever Super Bowl. Culp would move on to play for the Oilers with defensive coordinator Bum Phillips, and he wanted to rock that 3-4 playing Culp at nose tackle, and he'd dominate on the defensive end, winning Defensive Player of the Year in 1975, as well as his only first-team All-Pro nod. He'd make a few more second-team All-Pros and Pro Bowls and lighten it up at nose tackle, but playing that position, he'd deal with a lot of injuries. He'd wrap up his career playing with the Detroit Lions. After retirement, the Chiefs inducted Curly Culp into their Hall of Fame, and Culp would also get inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Like I said, many consider Curly Culp to be the greatest nose tackle to ever suit up in the NFL, and that's saying a lot. The next 61 on our list comes from the offensive line. I'm talking about center Rodney Hudson. He's currently a free agent, hasn't hung them up yet officially, so the 34-year-old could still suit up this season for a team. But in college, he was one of the best offensive linemen in the entire nation. He'd start 10 of 13 games as a freshman, earning second-team All-ACC that season. And over the next few years, he'd earn first-team All-ACC, first-team All-American, unanimous All-American. After his 4 years at Florida State, many considered him to be the most decorated lineman in Seminole history. So that's crazy. But despite this dominance, he'd fall to the second round of the drafts, where the Chiefs selected him 55th overall, which was the highest the Seminole has been drafted since Alex Barron went in the first round in 2005. But Hudson would fit right in with starting center position. Initially, he was a backup, but the following season, he'd earn the starting spot. He'd suffer a season-ending broken leg injury, but he'd return from that, get his spot back, improving from where he left off, earning a reputation as one of the best centers in the game. This led to the Raiders giving him a 5-year contract to join the team, and he just continued to improve, earning back-to-back Pro Bowl nods. After his third Pro Bowl selection and first second team All Pro nod, the Raiders would make him the highest paid center in the NFL. He'd get traded to the Cardinals where he was still a starter, but after some injury-filled season, he contemplated retirement but suited it up one more time for the Cardinals. And like I said, he hasn't officially hung it up, but Rodney Hudson, one of the best centers of his generation, especially on the college level, but injuries and tough times. Everybody's, it seems, has dealt with those injuries occasionally on these lists. The next 61 from the NFL, another offensive lineman who was nicknamed the Kitchen because he was bigger than William the Refrigerator Perry. I'm talking about Nate Newton. He was a multi-sport high school athlete that excelled in football, playing fullback until he outgrew the position and moved to the defensive line. A lot of big-name colleges were looking at him, but he'd stay local and accept the scholarship to play at Florida A&M, playing both sides of the ball for a season before ultimately moving to the offensive line as a senior. As a senior, he'd earned all MEAC nods before going undrafted in the '83 draft. He was selected by the Tampa Bay Bandits in the '83 USFL draft, but he opted to sign as an undrafted free agent with Washington. But on the same day he was waived, he was in a serious car accident and did end up signing with the Bandits in the now defunct USFL. He played 2 years under legendary old ball coach Steve Spurrier, and after that league folded, Newton would sign a contract to join the Cowboys. He became the starter, but almost got cut because of his weight issues. A turning point was when new head coach Jimmy Johnson, you might see him on Fox every Sunday for the NFL, but he moved Newton to tackle and embarrassed him by beating him in a running race, which really humbled him. And moving him to tackle helped improve his weight loss there, because you need to be a little quicker on the outside. But the position improved. Newton would have to move back to guard, and they helped form one of the best offensive lines in NFL history, known as the Great Wall of Dallas. You may remember me talking about his teammate Mark Stepnoski in episode 53. But during his tenure with the Cowboys, the Big Newton was one of the best at his position. Legendary battles with some of the best defensive linemen of that era. He'd be part of 3 Super Bowl winning teams in Dallas, Super Bowl 27 and 28, both over the Bills, and Super Bowl 30 over the Steelers. Newton made 6 Pro Bowls and 2 first-team All-Pros, playing his final season with the Panthers before calling it a career. He was named to the USFL All-Time team after its brief existence there. Newton had some issues off the field before getting his life on track, from dogfighting to carrying crazy amount of pots to battling those weight issues. It seems like he's found a better life since those troubled days, and he's always beloved in Dallas for being a part of those Super Bowl winning teams. Not all the retired players' stories go well, so I'm glad his has been turned into something positive. The last match from the NFL is, you guessed it, another offensive lineman, a guy who played guard and center over his career with the San Francisco 49ers, Jesse Sapolo. The Samoan native played high school and college football in Hawaii, and he was drafted by the Oakland Invaders in the '83 USFL draft and the 49ers in the 11th round in the NFL draft. They used to go to 11 rounds. It's crazy. Sapolo would sign with the latter, and the rest was history. He'd make back-to-back Pro Bowls in '93 and '94, the only 2 of his career. But more importantly, though, Sapolo was a big contributor to 4 Super Bowl rings with the Niners. Super Bowl 19 over the Dolphins, Super Bowl 23 over the Bengals, Super Bowl 24 over the Broncos, and 29 over that big defeat over the Chargers. But in retirement, Sapolo's played a massive role in establishing the Polynesian Pro Football Hall of Fame, an underrated offensive lineman who was a big part of championship teams. And we'll switch things up in order and jump to the hockey rink next, starting with perhaps one of the most famous 61s on this list, Rick Nash. He's a stud playing for the London Knights in the OHL, and this led to the left winger getting selected first overall in the 2002 draft by the Columbus Blue Jackets. Nash would have an immediate impact. After signing the most lucrative contract for a rookie at the time, on his debut, Nash would score, becoming just the 8th number 1 overall pick to score in his first game. And the first to do so since some guy named Mario Lemieux. Pretty good name there. So Nash put up huge numbers in his time in Columbus, helping get them to their first ever postseason in franchise history. The 2011-12 season would be Rick Nash's last in Columbus. There would be a lockout the following season where Nash would play for HC Davos in Switzerland, the same team he had played for during the 04-05 lockout. And after returning from injury in Europe, Nash joined the New York Rangers where he'd help contribute to some winning teams. Nash would wrap up his career suiting up 11 games for the Bruins, but he'd suffer a concussion from Tampa Bay's Cedric Paquette hitting him. And due to unresolved symptoms from a previous concussion, Nash would have to retire at the age of 34, but he's got huge numbers. I think he'll always be remembered as a Blue Jacket, in my opinion. He made the NHL All-Rookie team, had a share of the Rocket Richard Trophy there, made 4 of his 6 All-Star appearances with the franchise. The other 2 he got with the Rangers, but yeah, the Blue Jackets honored Rick Nash, retiring as 61, the only retired number by the franchise. Nash has also represented Canada a few different times at the biggest stage, winning 2 Olympic gold medals, one in 2010 in Vancouver and again in 2014 in Sochi. He also has 1 World Championship gold medal, go along with 2 silver medals, and he's one of the best left wingers of a generation, and a guy that may not always stick out in your head because he played on some pretty bad teams in Columbus, but this is where the debate comes in. Should Rick Nash be in the Hall of Fame? I thought it'd be a no-brainer, but when you dive into some of these forums and whatnot, a lot of people say maybe not. I think it's borderline, but I think he should get in, but time will tell. He does have his jersey retired by the Jackets. Like I said, the only player to do so. We'll go from a retired player to a current one, and a pretty good one at that. I'm talking about current Vegas Golden Knights, Mark Stone, rocking the 61 in a big way. He played in the WHL for the Brandon Wheat Kings, and that led to the Senators selecting Stone in the 6th round of the 2010 draft. He'd appear in Sens training camp, went back to the WHL, where he put up huge numbers, leading to the Senators having to bring him up, and once he was up for good. He'd finish his rookie campaign tied with points with Flames' Johnny Gaudreau and finish a runner-up in the Calder Trophy, losing out to Aaron Ekblad. He had some great seasons in Ottawa, and they couldn't come to term on a long-term contract, and he was traded to the Las Vegas Golden Knights, where he's become a fan favorite, and he was one of the alternate captains since his arrival, but he was named the first ever team captain in Golden Knights history, and yeah, he's brought huge success to this young franchise, earning his first All-Star nod and helping the Knights lift the Stanley Cup last season. Obviously the first in this very young franchise's history, but very impressive to win it that quick. He's faced some injuries the past few seasons and raised some eyebrows with how it's been handled. He's been on the long-term injured reserve the last few seasons, just giving the Knights more money to spend during the season, and then Mark Stone returns in the playoffs, much like he did this season, and the salary doesn't hit in the playoffs. Kind of a way to get around the rule, but until the next bargaining agreement, there's not much you can do about it. So loopholes are hot right now. Mark Stone, a fantastic player who, like I said, he does on both sides of the ice. He's great at takeaways, too, and we'll get more on him in the Las Vegas Golden Knights portion later in this episode. Going back to retired players, the next 61 on this list, a Russian hockey player, Maxim Afinogenov. He's got some nice goals. If you Google some of his goals, it's crazy. He played up playing professionally in his native Russia, lighting up for the Dynamo Moscow, the Russian Super League, leading to the Sabres drafting him 69th overall in the 97 entry draft. Afinogenov was productive in Buffalo and was rewarded with a contract. However, the same day he inked that contract, he was hit in the head with a puck during a pickup game in Moscow, suffering a concussion and causing him just to play 35 games the following season. He bounced back from some concussion issues and really have his best seasons in the NHL. And then he became the longest tenured Sabre during his time and was a real fan favorite. But after another injury-riddled season, the longest tenured Sabre would leave in free agency to join the Thrashers. In his one season there, he was second on the team in points, but after that season, Afinogenov would go back to Russia, signing with SKA St. Petersburg of the KHL. He had a good first season there, but like he's dealt with in the NHL, dealt with some injuries. He'd end up playing a few years with Vitesse Podolsk before finishing his career back where it started with Dynamo Moscow. Afinogenov also represented Russia internationally, winning a gold, 2 silvers, and a bronze in World Championship play, a bronze at the 2002 Salt Lake Winter Olympics, and a gold and a silver in World Juniors. So, very talented dude, underrated stick handler for sure. Last hockey mention is kind of a father-son duo here. Riley Stillman plays for the Sabres after bouncing around with the Panthers, Blackhawks, and Canucks. 26-year-old still trying to make a big impact in the NHL, and he's worn the 61 to honor his pops, Corey Stillman, Two-time Stanley Cup winner, Corey Stillman lifted the cup with the Lightning in 2004 and the Hurricanes in 2006. With the lockout splitting those seasons, Corey Stillman is one of only 12 players in NHL history to win the Stanley Cup in back-to-back seasons with different teams. So that's a unique one. Stillman is currently an assistant coach with the Coyotes, who are Utah-bound and are changing their name. Riley Stillman's brother Chase is playing in the AHL, so there's lots of hockey talk in the Stillman household. We'll go to baseball. The first person I'll mention is one of the best Cuban pitchers I've seen. I'm talking about Livan Hernandez. He was born and raised in Cuba, and his actual age has been debated. But after meeting a recruiter in Venezuela, Hernandez planned his route through Mexico to the United States. At the age of 20, he gave up his job as an official Cuban athlete and defected to the United States in 95. His brother, Orlando El Duque Hernandez, would defect 2 years later. It's just so crazy to me how Cuban players that come to America, what they had to do. It's mind-boggling. But anyway, after meeting with numerous officials in the Dominican Republic, Hernandez signed a 4-year deal to join the Florida Marlins. Had an immediate impact with the Marlins, looking even more impressive on their World Series run. On that run, Livan Hernandez would win NLCS MVP, pitching against a tough Braves team. He would then win the World Series MVP as he helped the Marlins win the 97 World Series, first in their franchise history. And after a few years with the Marlins, Hernandez would go on to pitch with the Giants for a few seasons, and following his loss in Game 7 of the World Series, where they fell to the Angels, Hernandez was involved in a trade to the Expos. Yeah, back when Montreal still had a team. He had some of his best years with the franchise, making the first All-Star game of his career and winning the lone Silver Slugger of his career. Following season, the Expos would relocate to Washington and become the Nationals, where Hernandez would continue to pitch great with the newly named franchise, winning the first major league game that was played in Washington since 1971. He and reliever Chad Cordero were named the first All-Stars in Washington National histories for a trivia night down the road for you. After a knee injury, Hernandez's numbers began to drop. He ended up playing with the Diamondbacks, Twins, Rockies, Mets, Nationals again, Braves, Brewers, before calling it a career. Livan Hernandez was one of the last workhorse style of pitchers. You don't see a lot of that today. He could go many innings and really held up during those. Regardless of what you think of Hernandez's career, you cannot take away that amazing run he had in 97, leading the then Florida Marlins to their first ever World Series. I remember watching that Game 7 as a pup. It was crazy. So, yeah, wildness with Livan Hernandez. The next 61 from the MLB, another pitcher, right-handed pitcher Bronson Arroyo. He played college ball at South Florida before getting drafted in the 3rd round of the 95 draft by the Pirates. He didn't play with the Pirates much, battling injuries. He'd get signed by the Red Sox and worked his way up from reliever to 5th starter. In the rotation, Arroyo would move back to the bullpen for the Red Sox World Series run, and they won the title in 2004, sweeping the Cardinals in 4. Following season back in the starter role was probably one of Arroyo's most productive, putting up career-high in wins, starts, innings, pitching appearances. He then signed a 3-year deal with the Red Sox on a hometown discount, going against what his agent was saying, and during spring training, Arroyo was traded to the Reds. But playing with the Reds were probably some of the best years for Arroyo. He'd make the lone All-Star appearance in his career, won the only Gold Glove of his career during his time there. He'd sign a 2-year deal, a big deal, to join the Diamondbacks, but it'd be the first time Arroyo got placed on the disabled list his entire career. He had to undergo Tommy John surgery to repair his torn UCL, keeping him out for the rest of that season and the season after. He'd get traded to the Braves and then the Dodgers, never making a major league appearance for either team. Signed with the Nationals, but again, injuries would kick in and he'd never suit up. He signed back with the Reds for his final season, getting nice tributes throughout, a nice send-off for a guy that was really loved by the franchise, so much so he was even inducted into the Reds Hall of Fame. And as good as he was pitching, Arroyo was also known for his musical gifts. In 2005, he released a debut album covering the bases, a little baseball pun, including covers from bands such as Pearl Jam, Alice in Chains, Stone Temple Pilots, Foo Fighters, and Incubus. So there you go, Bronson Arroyo, the multi-threat there. Next 61 from the MLB is another pitcher, right-handed pitcher, who's currently in the 5th starter in the rotation for the Padres. I'm talking about Matt Waldron. He played college baseball for the University of Nebraska, where he pitched for the Cornhuskers for 4 years, leading to Cleveland drafting him in the 18th round of the 2019 draft. He never suited up in the majors for Cleveland and got traded to the Padres, where he made his debut last season after spending time in the minor leagues. And like I said, the 27-year-old's in the pitching rotation. hoping to continue going forward. He hasn't had the best few games here, but hopefully he can turn it around. And he's one of the rare pitchers that carry a knuckleball in his arsenal, especially a pitcher that doesn't solely rely on that pitch. Nice little one to have in your back pocket. Next 61 from the baseball diamond is another pitcher, this time a lefty from the Dominican Republic. I'm talking about Jose Hernandez. He initially signed with the Dodgers as an international free agent, but didn't get the call up. So in 2022, he was selected by the Pirates in the Rule 5 draft. He'd make 50 relief appearances for the Pirates. Then this season, he'd make the opening day roster. And in his first appearance this season, he'd pitch scoreless 12th inning and notch his first career save. 26-year-old is part of the Pirates relievers and should be looking to have some good moments this season in that surprisingly tough NL Central this season. The next 61, we're going back to retired pitchers, a right-hander from South Korea. I'm talking about Chan-Ho Park. Great high school player, would get scouted by the Dodgers where he'd sign as an amateur free agent. After playing the bulk of his time in the minor leagues, he'd get his call-up and make his major debut for the Dodgers, becoming a regular in the rotation. And although he struggled, like in '99, when he became the only pitcher in history of baseball, it's a long list of history there, to allow 2 grand slams in the same inning to the same player. That's right, Fernando Tatis of the St. Louis Cardinals. You might know his son playing with the Padres right now, but Chan-Ho Park would start to find his rhythm with the Dodgers and make his only All-Star game of his career there. That same season, though, Chan-Ho Park gave up Barry Bonds' record-breaking 71st and 72nd home runs in a game against the Giants. Chan-Ho Park signed a large contract to join the Rangers, but injuries combined with a hitter's ballpark led to Ho Park struggling during his time there. He'd get traded to the Padres, where he would play a reliever role before moving back to the starting role. But then he would suffer intestinal bleeding and was put on the disabled list, needing surgery to recover from a rare congenital effect called Meckel's diverticulum. He had a successful surgery, and his wife gave birth to his baby daughter at the same hospital, just days apart. So at least there was something good coming out of that. He'd finish his contract out with the Padres and wind up playing with the Mets, Dodgers again, Phillies, Yankees, and his last MLB appearance would be with the Pirates. And during his brief time with the Pirates, Chan-Ho Park would surpass Hideo Nomo for the most wins by an Asian-born pitcher. The following season, Ho Park would play 1 season in the MPB in Japan before playing his final season in his home country of South Korea, suiting up for the Hanwha Eagles of the KBO. Powerful pitcher that experienced some success in the major leagues, and like I said, he's got the record of the most wins by an Asian-born pitcher. The next 61 is current pitcher for the Royals. I'm talking about 24-year-old Venezuelan pitcher Angel Zerpa. He signed with the Royals as an international free agent in 2016 at the age of 16. Spent some time playing in the minors and has played sparingly for the Royals and majors until this year. He made 15 appearances in a relief role, and he's been pretty effective. He's got 1.76 ERA this season. I see him having a bigger role for a Royals team that surprised some people this year. Wrapping up the 61 baseball segment, I'll mention another 2 current pitchers that are drawing the 61. Right-handed pitcher for the Rockies, Justin Lawrence. He was born in Panama but moved to the States when he was 2. Played college ball with Jacksonville University and Daytona State College, leading to Colorado drafting him in the 12th round in the 2015 draft, where he spent a lot of time in the minor leagues and was suspended 80 games for testing positive for a PED. After minor leagues were shut down for COVID, Lawrence would finally get back into pitching and work his way into the majors, where he's now the current closer for the Colorado Rockies. The last 61 mentioned from baseball is Seth Martinez, currently pitches for the Astros and had to start some games this season with the injuries the team's dealt. Played college baseball at Arizona State before getting drafted in the 17th round by the Athletics in the 2016 draft. He never suited up for the A's and was selected by the Astros in the Rule 5 draft. And after some time in the minor leagues, he's worked his way onto the roster, really doing whatever he can to help the team. And we'll finally wrap up the 61 segment with the NBA. Much like the last few numbers in these jersey mentions, there are not a lot of NBA players repping these. Even the person I'm going to mention is known more for another sport. I'm talking about Pat Spencer. He's most renowned lacrosse players in NCAA history. During his 4 years at Loyola, his team compiled a record of 49 wins, 19 losses, and in 2016, they made the NCAA Final Four. During his lacrosse days, he set the NCAA record for assists. He also achieved the Tourton Award, regarded as the Heisman for the NCAA Div 1 lacrosse. He'd get drafted with the first overall pick by the Utah Archers in the Premier Lacrosse League. However, he declined to pursue it professionally and used his last year of college eligibility to play basketball at Northwestern, where he put up pretty good numbers, especially for a guy who wasn't playing the sport competitively his entire college career. During COVID times, he spent some time in Germany playing for the Hamburg Towers and averaged just under double digits in points. He then came back to America, played in the G League, put up some pretty big numbers with the Santa Cruz Warriors, and ended up on a two-way contract with Golden State, where he made his debut with the Warriors, suiting up 6 times in Golden State. I love the story behind it. You don't see a lot of two-sport players that are that dominant anymore. I mean, usually if we did, it was baseball and football, like Dion or Bo Jackson. So the lacrosse, basketball mix, I like it. The only other 2 times that 61 was worn in the NBA was ironically by the same team. In 1962, Bavo Nordman wore the number in the 62 season, followed by Dave Piontek, who would wear the 61 the following season. So that's it. There you go. Now, from jerseys to the wild week of sports, the NHL playoffs, man, they've lived up to some craziness. Jubilation, heartbreak, depending on who you cheer for. On the day of recording last week's episode, I mentioned how the Oilers were in position to end their first round with the Los Angeles Kings, and that's exactly what they did. Evander Kane opened the score and they get the home crowd rocking, only for Alex Lafreniere to be the recipient of a lucky bounce, and he tapped it in before the intermission, and they'd take the lead into the early second when Lizette scored. Edmonton would go on the lethal power play, and Draisaitl would tie things up. Minutes later, Draisaitl would score again, this time putting the Oilers up 3-2. Late in the period, Hyman would score to make it 4-2. Adrian Kempe would get one. Adrian Kemp would get one back for the Kings, and they'd have their goalie pulled, but they wouldn't come back all the way. Oilers held on for the 4-3 win, held on for the 4-1 series win. And we go to another Canadian team, the Canucks, the Vancouver Canucks. They went to Nashville with a chance to wrap up their first round series. A very nervy game with both teams getting chances, but neither team was getting any goals. The goaltenders were playing great. Vancouver's P.S. Suter would score with just 1:39 left in the third, and that'd be the only goal of the game. A shutout for Artis Silvis as the Canucks win the series 4-2, punch their ticket to the second round. Where we have an all-Canadian matchup. Vancouver Canucks, they're hosting the Edmonton Oilers. It's going to be a hell of a series, I tell you what. Sucks that one of those Canadian teams will have to go home after the second round, but game one of that series will begin Wednesday, May 8th in Vancouver, and I picked the Oilers to represent the West in the Stanley Cup Final, so I have them winning this series. I'm thinking it could go 7, though. Last episode, I already talked about the Avalanche grounding the Jets and eliminating Winnipeg in 5 games, and they've been sitting back in Colorado waiting to see who their next opponent will be. The Vegas Golden Knights and Stars put on a very entertaining first-round series, a very even-matched teams that put on some of the best playoff hockey we've seen. Dallas would beat the Knights in Dallas to take... they beat Dallas 3-2 to take a 3-2 lead in this series, only for Vegas to return the favor and shut out the Stars in the desert. Aiden Hill securing the shutout in that one, the force of Game 7. And both goaltenders were making great saves to start the game off in this pivotal Game 7, and it would come down to a turnover. A bad giveaway in the Vegas end led to Wyatt Johnson firing it home, giving Dallas a 1-0 lead late in the period. Late in the second period, some crisp passing led to Brett Hoden tying it up for the Knights, and we'd have a tie game going to the third period. But just 44 seconds into the frame, Radek Faksa would backhand his shot past Aiden Hill, making it 2-1. And Vegas threw everything they could, tried to tie it up, but they couldn't. And Dallas won 2-1 to win the series 4-3, knocking out last year's Stanley Cup champs. And if you need someone going into a Game 7, look no further than Dallas Stars head coach Pete DeBoer. In Game 7, he's now 8-0. And Dallas Stars will now host the Colorado Avalanche in Game 1 of the second round series starting tonight, May 7th, my wife's birthday. So this should be a great series, and I have the Avalanche barely beating the Stars, setting up a Colorado-Edmonton battle. But that just leaves one first-round series matchup left, the original 6 battle between the Boston Bruins, Toronto Maple Leafs. Leafs hosted the Bruins, looking to force a Game 7, and William Nylander has received a lot of criticism, really stepped up in Game 6, scoring the opening goal in the last minute of the second period. Then the third period, Nylander would get a breakaway and ice the game with his second. But Boston put on late pressure and scored with 0.1 seconds left. I mean, just ruining Joseph Woll's shutout by 0.1, but Doesn't matter. You win's a win, and a massive 2-1 win sent the Leafs back to Boston for Game 7. And Joseph Woll, who was lights out, picked up an injury near the end of the game and would miss Game 7. I really dropped the ball. He would have been a great player to mention in episode number 60, but he wasn't good to go. Leafs would go with Ilya Samsonov for Game 7. The Bruins obviously going with Swayman. The Leafs were looking to pull off this 3-1 comeback. The Bruins were looking to avoid a collapse. Something had to give. And after two scoreless periods where the goaltenders looked great, we'd finally get a goal in the third. Defensive pressure by the Leafs led to Bertuzzi stealing the puck, finding Matthews, who found Nylander, who put the Leafs up 1-0 about halfway through the third. But the joy was short-lived. Not even 2 minutes later, Boston would tie it up with some intense pressure, leading to Lindholm scoring. There'd be no more goals in regulation, and you'd hear those magic words, Game 7, overtime. Nothing sweeter, unless you're on the losing end, I guess. But not even 2 minutes into the extra frame, Boston's Lindholm fired it deep into the zone. And who would outskate all the Leafs to get to the puck first? None other than David Pastrnak, the guy who was called out by head coach Jim Montgomery, saying Pastrnak needs to be better. And what did the Star do? He scored the series-clinching overtime winner. He just wanted the puck more. And like the highlight, he just outskated everyone to that puck, put it in. Tough loss for the Leafs, who are so close to advancing and pulling off that huge comeback. Their media is so brutal on them, so it'll be a long off season for that franchise and the league's Rocket Richard recipient Austin Matthews. Also, lots of talk on whether the Leafs should sign an extension to Mitch Marner to a long deal. So, fortunately, the Leafs have to talk about this stuff now because their season's done. So that has the Bruins taking on the Florida Panthers, who have just been chilling out, waiting to play since eliminating Tampa Bay in 5 games. And the Bruins hosted the Panthers in Game 1 of the Round 2 matchup. The Bruins look like a team that just went to 7 games and is on high intensity, while the Panthers look like a team that's just been chilling out in Florida. So Florida did open the scoring in the second period with Matthew Tkachuk, but Boston would score 3 goals in the last 7 minutes of the second period. They really blew the game up. They'd had 2 more in the third, including an empty netter, to take the 5-1 win. I think the Panthers will ultimately win this series, but they got to shake some rust off as Game 2 goes down Wednesday, May 8th. And like I said, Boston leads the series 1-0. So the only second round matchup that has begun other than that one, as of this recording, the Carolina Hurricanes and New York Rangers. I mentioned last episode how the Hurricanes took care of the Islanders in 5 games, and the Rangers swept the Capitals, keeping Alexander Ovechkin pointless in a playoff series for the first time ever. Now you have these two juggernauts facing off with each other, and Game 1 did not disappoint. Rangers fans were going nuts as their team hosted the Hurricanes, and Carolina looked to knock off back-to-back New York teams. The Rangers got the early start was Zibanejad would score just minutes into the game. But just minutes later, Jacob Slavin would equalize for the Hurricanes. And then New York would go crazy again when Zibanejad would score his second of the game on the power play. And Vincent Trocheck would add another for the Rangers, and they'd take a 3-1 lead in intermission. Carolina would make things nervous when Necas scored to make it 3-2. But then halfway through the period, Artemi Panarin would squeak one to make it 4-2. Seth Jarvis would get one back late for the Hurricanes, but that's as close as they'd get. Big 4-3 win for the Rangers, taking the 1-0 lead in the series. Second game of that series already going on tonight, so I picked the Rangers to meet the Oilers in the Stanley Cup Finals, so I'm going with the Rangers to beat the Hurricanes in this series. And like I said, lots of good hockey to be watched. If you're missing out, just now's a good time to tune in. If you're playing any drafts or anything, playoff drafts, hopefully you got McDavid or Draisaitl. McDavid leading the league with 12 points, Draisaitl, Rangers, Mika Zibanejad, and Florida's Matthew Tkachuk, each with 10. So, like I said, lots of good hockey going on. We'll go to footy, the Champions League. Semifinals are one of the biggest footy competitions in the world. Last episode, I already talked about Germany and Bayern Munich, talking about the game in Germany with Bayern Munich and Real Madrid, playing to a 2-2 draw. The other semifinal fixture was again in Germany with Borussia Dortmund hosting Paris Saint-Germain. The German host would open the scoring when a long ball freed Nicholas Füllkrug. He'd take the ball and finish wonderfully, putting Dortmund up 1-0 after 36 minutes. And that goal was the difference. Dortmund protect their amazing home turf, winning 1-0, and they just looked the better team throughout the match. Now we'll see how PSG responds when they go back to the French capital. The second leg between these two teams will be played today. Like I said, in Paris, the French capital, with the second leg of Real Madrid and Bayern Munich taking place at the Bernabeu in Madrid going down tomorrow, May 8th. Two exciting matches with a trip to London and Wembley in the Champions League final on the line. I'm thinking PSG plays much better, but I still have Dortmund holding on to advance to the final. And sticking with my German roots, I have Bayern Munich beating Real Madrid in Spain, setting up an all-German final in London where I have Bayern Munich winning the Champions League over Dortmund. Bayern wins trophies. They did win the Bundesliga this year for the first time in 11 seasons. And I know that's kind of a weird logic to go off, but I feel the Bavarian Giants will raise the Champions League trophy this season. Got to get through Madrid first, but go to the Europa League. Their semifinals first leg. You had French side Marseille hosting Italian side Atalanta. The visitors would open the scoring just 11 minutes into the match. The on-fire former West Ham player Gianluca Samacca would fire his shot home, again finding the back of the net. Atalanta grabbed the early 1-0 lead, but it wouldn't even last 9 minutes. Short corner kick led the ball coming to Mbemba Mengalou, who would strike it from outside the box, fooling the keeper and bouncing it in off the inside of the post. Wonderful goal, tying it up at 1 after 20 minutes, and that's how the game would end. A very even match, ended evenly at 1, with the teams heading back to Italy all squared up. The other semifinals between Italian side Roma and German champions Bayer Leverkusen. The unbeatens would open the scoring in the first leg. On a counterattack, Leverkusen, they'd get some luck from Roma defender Rick Karstroff misplaying it terribly, and Leverkusen would get it. Grimaldo would find Florian Wirtz, and the German striker would add another goal to his tally, and Leverkusen led 1-0 after 28 minutes. Some nice passing on the build-up led to Leverkusen doubling their lead in the 73rd when Robert Andrich curled his beauty in the top corner, making it 2-0 for Leverkusen, which is how the game ended. Leverkusen now take a 2-0 lead back to Germany, staying unbeaten along the way. So both legs will be played on Thursday, May 9th. Leverkusen hosting Roma, leading 2-0 on aggregate and still looking to stay undefeated on the year in all competitions. Atalanta hosts Marseille, all tied up at 1 on aggregate. And I'm going with Leverkusen to win the match and obviously win on aggregate, punching their ticket to the Europa League final, which will be in Dublin, Ireland this year. And in the other semifinal, it's really a toss-up for me, but I have Atalanta pulling this one off and setting up an interesting final with Leverkusen. The Conference League semifinals in Europa, the last remaining Premier League team in European competition, Aston Villa, were hosting Greek side Olympiacos, and in the first leg of their final, it's really went the Greek way. They got off to the perfect start where Villa would give it up in their own end, and Ayoub El Kaabi would find the back of the net, putting them up 1-0 after 16 minutes. Not even 13 minutes later, El Kaabi would find the back of the net again, leading 2-0. And then at first half stoppage time, Ollie Watkins would cut the lead in half, getting one back for Villa. And early in the second half, Moussa Diaby would score, tying the game up at 2 after 52 minutes. But the hometown cheers wouldn't last long. Minutes later, Olympiacos would have a corner where there'd be a handball in the box, leading to El Kaabi stepping up and converting from the spot, giving him a hat-trick after 56 minutes of play and giving Olympiacos the 3-2 lead. In the 67th minute, Santiago Heze tried his luck from long distance and get a huge deflection and hit the back of the net. Olympiacos, the surprise 4-2 win in Aston Villa. Didn't see that one coming, and they're heading back to Greece with a 4-2 lead. Italian side Fiorentina was hosting Belgian side Club Brugge, and not even 5 minutes into the match, home side would get an opening goal through a Soto rocket. He'd find the top corner from outside the box, and the visitors were looking to the answer. The ball struck a hand in the Fiorentina box, leading to a penalty for Bruges, where Hans Vanaken would tie it up. In the 37th minute, Bellotti would swivel and blast his shot, putting Fiorentina back up 2-1 after 37 minutes. Then Onyedika would get his second yellow card, 2 within 3 minutes of each other, and he'd get dismissed for Club Brugge. And despite going a man down, the Belgian side would equalize just 2 minutes after the dismissal. Thiago would chase down a long ball and beat the keeper, tying it up at 2 after 63 minutes. And despite being a man down, this game looked like it'd be a draw. But then at stoppage time, Fiorentina turned the pressure up again, hitting the post, but it bounced back to Nzola, who'd find the back of the net, sealing the 3-2 home win for Fiorentina. So 2 great matches in those semifinals, and the second leg of these matches will go down this week. No break for these teams. Club Brugge hosting Fiorentina back in Belgium, down 3-2 on aggregate. That takes place tomorrow, Wednesday, May 8th. While Greek side Olympiacos take a 4-2 lead home on aggregate, with Aston Villa really having an uphill battle ahead of them. That second leg match going down Thursday, May 9th. I have Fiorentina holding on the win on aggregate and advancing to the Conference League final. I think Olympiacos has too big of a lead for Villa to overcome on the road. That crowd in Greece will be rocking, especially since the Conference League final will be taking place in Athens this year. So Olympiacos will really want to play in their home country with a chance of raising a European trophy. To the Premier Leagues for some domestic play here. There was a makeup game midweek with a London derby of Chelsea hosting Tottenham. Trevor Chalobah would open the scoring for Chelsea in the first half, and Nicholas Jackson would double their lead in the second. Big 2-0 win for Chelsea, and another loss that's hurting Tottenham's hopes of playing Champions League footy next year. Luton Town hosted Everton to kick off the weekend. A foul stemming from a corner kick led to an Everton penalty opportunity, and Dominic Calvert-Lewin would step up and smash it down the middle, giving the visitors a 1-0 lead after 24 minutes, only for Luton Town to equalize just 7 minutes later. A ball launched into the box was controlled by Elijah Adebayo, and the Luton frontman showed off his strength, holding off a defender and firing it home. And it'd be tied after 31 minutes, and it'd be tied after 90 minutes, as it would end 1-1. Arsenal hosted Bournemouth and were looking to keep their title hopes alive. Kai Havertz got brought down in the box, and Arsenal would get an early penalty chance. Saka would convert from the spot, and Arsenal had an early lead. Arsenal continued to dominate the game and would finally get their second goal. You're wondering when it would come, and Declan Rice set up Leandro Trossard, who found the corner of the net, and it looked like Bournemouth quickly had got one back, but VAR determined that Arsenal keeper David Raya was fouled. Little bit of a harsh call, but really swung the game. The Gunners would add a third late when Declan Rice timed his run perfectly and found the back of the net. Big 3-0 win for Arsenal. In a game that had relegation implications involved, you had bottom of the table Sheffield United hosting Nottingham Forest, who's just outside the relegation zone, and this home side would get off to a great start. Diaz would get taken down in the box, and Sheffield United would get a penalty where Diaz would score, putting Sheffield United up 1-0 after 17 minutes. Nottingham Forest would get their equalizer when Hudson-Odoi scored a beauty, putting it out of the reach of the keeper to make it 1-1. Forest would then take the lead in the 51st minute when Ryan Yates scored his first ever top-flight goal with the club. Hudson-Odoi would get his brace in the 65th minute with another nice goal. And then things got worse for Sheffield United when Ahmed Ozic would pick up his second yellow card, and they'd have to wrap the game up with 10 players. A big 3-1 win for Forest that really helps them in the table. We'll get more to that table later. Speaking of a team in relegation zone, Burnley, they were hosting Newcastle, but the visitors came out a lot hungrier than the hosts. 3 goals in the first 40 minutes blew it up. First Callum Wilson, then Sean Longstaff, followed by Bruno Guimaraes. And in the second half, Anthony Gordon would get taken down in the box, where Alexander Isak would step up, having never been stopped in Newcastle colours, but he'd get stopped for the first time by the often criticized, mostly by me, Muric, the keeper for Burnley. But Isak would make up for it soon after. He'd score after 55 minutes to give them a 4-0 lead. Not many Burnley fans stuck around, but the ones that did got to see Burnley score from a corner kick. Darragh O'Shea found the back of the net. Some bright spot on an otherwise bad day for Burnley as they dropped their match 4-1 against Newcastle. Brentford hosted Fulham. Both teams lots of chances, just lacking the finishing touch. That game would end in a 0-0 draw. City hosted Wolves and were hoping to keep pace with Arsenal, who had won earlier, as I mentioned. And they did that and then some. The big Norwegian, Erling Haaland, he'd score a first-half hat-trick for City. I mean, 2 of his goals were penalties, but he still had to convert them. Early in the second half, Wolves brought some excitement to the fans when some complacency by Man City led to Wolves getting the ball, and they tried a cross where City keeper Ederson went to bat it away, but he batted it right to Hwang of the Wolves, who scored to make it 3-1. But that didn't last too long. A cleaner counterattack led to Haaland firing home another goal, his 4th of the match. Substitute Julian Alvarez would take advantage of some bad passing in the Wolves' end, and when Rodri got the ball, he'd find the Argentinian for the big goal. 5-1 win for Manchester City. They just keep rolling. Chelsea were coming off a big London win midweek that I had mentioned, and they had another London rival ahead of them, my West Ham, and to be honest, didn't even really want to talk about this game, but I cover the sports, I gotta cover it, and regardless of what happens to the teams I cheer for. But anyway, Chelsea came out on fire. Cole Palmer put Chelsea up after 15 minutes. Conor Gallagher doubled the lead 15 minutes later. Midweek made it 3-0 6 minutes after that goal, and West Ham was down 3-0 after 36 minutes. Just minutes into the second half, Midweek would time his run perfectly and could have had his second, but unselfishly set up Nicholas Jackson for a goal. And then Jackson would add a brace and late in the game with his second, so it was 5-0 win for Chelsea. I mean, they killed us. Jared Bowen of West Ham hit the post 3 different times in this game. I mean, if one of those early ones go in, maybe it changes the game, but you can't play the what-if game. They just wanted it more and made us look bad. And I don't know if it was the timing of the loss or what, but it was announced our manager, West Ham manager David Moyes, and the club have come to a mutual decision that this is his last with the club. I've been harsh on Moyes at times, but what he's done with West Ham is remarkable. Raising the Conference League trophy last year, that's pretty awesome. He's one of the best managers in the Premier League, and he'll be missed by us. This could maybe set up a potential, though, to hire Will Still. You might remember me talking about the 31-year-old manager before. He was coaching Reims in League One before leaving recently. He got his claim to fame by lighting it up on Football Manager, the classic video game, and this could be a risky move for West Ham. Like I said, he's 31 years old, but he said he's got a desire to manage in the Premier League. West Ham's a dream club. Maybe this is where dreams come true. Maybe this is our Hall & Oates moment, but we'll see what happens. We've got to end this season first, right? Let's play it by ear here. Brighton hosted Aston Villa, and the home side looked a much better team despite their recent struggles. The game would stay scoreless for a while, and I don't know if Villa just had a hangover from that Conference League matchup earlier, but Brighton had the better chances, and late in the match, Aston Villa's Konsa would bring down an attacking Brighton player in the box, resulting in Brighton getting a penalty chance. And João Pedro stepped up, having hit 10 out of 10 on penalties this season, and this penalty attempt wasn't that good. It was stopped by Villa keeper Robert Olsen, but as he made the save, he hit it right back to Pedro, who easily headed it in, making it 1-0 in the 87th minute. Brighton picking up the big home win. Their first win in the Premier League after going winless in their previous 6. And like I said, it was like Villa's minds were on their next tie against Olympiacos in the Europa Conference League. Liverpool hosted Tottenham in a highly anticipated match. A lovely Cody Gakpo cross found Mo Salah at the back post, and his header beat the keeper, putting them up 1-0 after 16 minutes. Liverpool stayed on the gas pedal and got their second just before the halftime whistle. Cross in the box found Andy Robertson, who passed it to Salah. Salah's shot was stopped, but Robertson kept his run going and get the easy tap and giving them a 2-0 lead at break. And then not even 5 minutes in the second half, it looked like Elliott was looking to have his cross reach Luis Diaz. It was coming a little short, though, but no worry. Cody Gakpo jumped up and headed it home. And Elliott wasn't done there, though. 9 minutes later, after his assist, he'd curl a stunner in the top corner, making it 4-0 after 59 minutes. Tottenham would give their visiting fans something to cheer about. In the 72nd minute, Richarlison would get one back. Then Richarlison would find Son to make it 4-2 just 5 minutes later. And 2 goals in 5 minutes, suddenly it's 4-2. But yeah, it was too little too late. Liverpool held on for the 4-2 win. In the last game of the match weekend at Crystal Palace hosting Man U, Palace have been playing really good as of late, and this kind of carried into this match. Michael Olise would go on a run and finish perfectly, finding the corner of the net, giving Palace the 1-0 lead after 12 minutes. Palace would take the ball around the halfway line. Mateta would go on a long run, embarrassing Johnny Evans on the way. He really showed his age on that one before firing his shot into the back of the net. And after 40 minutes, Palace led 2-0. Second half didn't get much better for Manchester United. Palace kept up the pressure, and they'd get their third. A ball into the box caused some trouble, and Tyreek Mitchell would score, making it 3-0. Then Michael Olise would get his brace after finding the corner with an even nicer goal than his first in the 66th minute, making it 4-0 for Palace, and that's how the game would end. You could feel the tension from United fans. They do not expect to be losing 4-0 to Palace at this point of the season. Tough times, I guess, for them. That brings us to the Premier League table, and one of the last leagues to award a champion. You'll hear as I go throughout Europe here, all the other leagues, they're kind of wrapping up their title. This one's not done yet. Arsenal sit first with 83 points with 2 games left in the season. Away at Old Trafford against Man U, that's a big one. And at home against Everton, they wrapped up the season. While Man City is just 1 point behind Arsenal. 3 games left. They play 2 games in London, a match in Fulham, followed by a midweek game against Tottenham, a make-up game. Then they wrap up their season at home against my West Ham. Arsenal have a slightly better goal difference, but that can change in these last few games. Liverpool in third technically have a chance to win the league, but they need to win out and have the teams above them lose, so I don't think that'll happen, but Klopp's still having a pretty good last season with the club. Aston Villa sit in that last Champions League spot in fourth, 7 point lead over Tottenham in fifth, and Tottenham, they have that game in hand and they're still alive for that spot, but man, losers of 4 in a row in the Premier League. They've been slumping at the worst time. We'll look at the bottom of the table. Sheffield United sitting last, and we know they are looking down. They're going down a division. Burnley in 19th are still technically alive, and they need to win their last 2 games and get some help to help them out. So I think Vincent Kompany's team is going down as well. Right now, Luton Town sit 18th with 26 points, and Forest are just above them with 29. So there is a chance Luton could stay up and Forest go down. Forest do own that goal differential by 11 goals, so Luton would need to finish with more points to avoid relegation. Forest's last 2 matches are at home against Chelsea, followed by a road game against Burnley, while Luton Town's last 2 are against West Ham and Fulham. So I'm thinking Luton Town's going to be going down. They had that magic story because they were in the National League just a few years ago, but I think they're getting relegated. It's going to look like all 3 teams that got promoted to the Premier League are going right back down in the Championship. There's still promotion playoffs going down the EFL pyramid in the UK. We'll get more to those as they wrap up going to the next episode. But the National League playoff wrapped up. And as seen in the show Welcome to Wrexham, it is so damn hard to get out of the National League and get in the EFL. The champion of the league gets up and there's only one other spot. And so this spot was up for grabs in the final in Wembley this past weekend, with the winner moving up to League 2 of the EFL. This game went to penalties with Bromley and Solihull Moors, and Bromley would prevail, punching their ticket to League 2. And a cool thing involving Bromley, they brought in 23-year-old Nathan Owalby to bring in a new tactical perspective. He used to light it up in Football Manager, much like Will Still I talked about earlier, and he was on the sideline in Wembley helping coach Bromley to promotion. First time Bromley will ever play in the EFL in their entire 132 years of existence. Amazing. Congrats to Bromley. Go to Bundesliga. The German top division kicked off with Hoffenheim hosting Leipzig. Leipzig opened the scoring in the 38th minute when Sesko would chase down a long ball and finish it clinically, putting Leipzig up 1-0. The second half, the game would get turned a bit on its head. Leipzig's Xavi Simons would pick up his second yellow card, getting dismissed from the match in the 72nd minute, inspiring the home side a bit. And they'd get their equalizer in the 90th minute when Kramaric would meet across to tie it up late. A big result for Hoffenheim, while Leipzig will be kicking themselves as they're trying to secure a Champions League spot. Dortmund were feeling pretty good after their midweek win over PSG in the Champions League, and they were hoping to maintain that high level of play when they hosted Augsburg. And they really dominated. Moukoko would open up the scoring just 4 minutes into the match. Daniel Malin would double the lead with a header in the 20th, and just 9 minutes after that, Moukoko would get his second of the match, making it 3-0 Dortmund. Ruben Vargas would get one back soon after for Augsburg, but the first half goals wouldn't stop there. Just days after announcing he'd be leaving the club after 12 seasons, Marco Reus would go on a run, get a breakaway, beat the keeper to make it 4-1 after 34 minutes played. Dortmund would add another, and Reus would set up Felix Nemetschek. He scored his first goal for Dortmund in the Bundesliga. Like I said, huge 5-1 win for Dortmund. Wolfsburg hosted bottom of the table Darmstadt, and the home side opened the scoring when Patrick Wimmer slid his shot into the corner. Some dancing in the box led to Darmstadt keeper getting way out of position, and the ball came to Jonas Wind, who'd score, and Wolfsburg were up 2-0 after just 10 minutes. And Wolfsburg would add another in stoppage time when the substitutes would combine. Kaminski's cross would find a Vakil of Czerny, who'd find the back of the net. Easy 3-1 Wolfsburg win over Darmstadt. Werder Bremen hosted Mönchengladbach in a bout with 2 teams trying to stay afloat in the Bundesliga. Robin Hack would put the visitors up with a lovely shot just 8 minutes in. Then the home side would equalize in the dying moments of the first half when Nick Woltemade would score his first ever Bundesliga goal. The 22-year-old found the back of the net. Well timed, too, as the game was just going into halftime. And then Bremen would complete the full comeback when Woltemade would score a thumping header from a corner. His second match, going from 0 goals to 2 goals in 66 minutes. But there'd be some late-game drama as the ball struck the hand of a Bremen player in the box, resulting in an opportunity for Mönchengladbach to score from the penalty spot. And that's just what Florian Neuhaus did, stepping up, smashing it home, tying the game at 2 in stoppage time. a massive point saved for Mönchengladbach, where every point's value just goes up this time of the year. Stuttgart was hoping to keep their magical season going as they hosted Bayern Munich. Stuttgart have a slim chance to catch Munich in the table, and they'd need a win over them to keep those hopes alive. They'd take a quick throw in, almost catching Bayern off guard, and that led to a looping ball finding Sturgu, who scored to make it 1-0 after 29 minutes. Bayern would look to equalize, and Gnabry would get a slight brush on the face. It wasn't much, but he'd go down. Harry Kane would step up and convert from the spot. His 26th Bundesliga goal of the season tied the game up just a minute and 37 minutes, or tied the game up at 37 minutes into the match. Late in the match, some nice passing led to a sick cross that found Young at the back post. His header beat Neuer, and Stuttgart would lead for the second time of the match, leading 2-1. Then after 83 minutes, Stuttgart would put the game on ice when, in stoppage time, Silas would score a massive 3-1 win for Stuttgart. Maybe Bayern Munich's eyes were on their midweek Champions League bout with Arsenal, but regardless, kudos to Stuttgart, who played well. Cologne hosted Freiburg in a battle with two different goals in mind. Freiburg hoping to try to qualify for European competition, while Cologne are just trying to stay in the top flight. Home side Cologne had more chances but could not find a goal. This game ends in a goalless draw. A point's a point, but each of these teams were looking for 3 points in the win. A match that had plenty of relegation implications. Union Berlin hosted Bochum. Bochum opened the scoring when a low cross found Maximilian Vidic. He found the back of the net, putting the team up 1-0 after 16. Vidic would score a brace and put Bochum up 2-0 when he showed off some footwork before scoring, putting the visitors up 2 after 31 minutes. Not even 6 minutes later, Kevin Schlotterbeck would get open and make it 3-0. The home side tried to get back into it in the second half. Vertessen tried his luck from long range and beat the keeper to make it 3-1. And minutes later, Union Berlin got another back. A long ball found its way to Chris Badia, who scored to make it 3-2. Bochum hoped to stop that momentum from a long throw-in. It led to some disarray, and Hoffman would score, making it 4-2 Bochum. And just minutes later, Union Berlin would score again. Hollerback would look for a Hollerback girl and find the back of the net. A tremendous comeback that came up a little short. Big 4-3 win for Bochum. Frankfurt hosted Leverkusen with their chance to try to give the champions their first defeat of the season, but the unbeatens are unbeaten for a reason. They'd opened the scoring just 12 minutes in with Granit Xhaka curling a beauty into the corner, giving Leverkusen the lead. Frankfurt looked to equalize from a corner, and the cross into the box found a wide open Hugo Ekete, whose header found the back of the net, and the game was tied at 1. Looked like the game may be tied going into halftime, but Patrick Schick rose up and headed the ball into the net, making it 2-1. Then the second half, a tug on the jersey in the box led to Leverkusen penalty, where Palacios would calmly put it away to make it 3-1. Leverkusen would then show off the counterattack prowess with Jeremy Frimpong scoring off the bench to make it 4-1. They'd get another penalty where Victor Boniface would step up to make it 5-1. Extending this unbeaten streak in the Bundesliga, and their unbeaten streak across all competitions is now at 48. Simply amazing what we're witnessing right now with Leverkusen. Heidenheim would host Mainz in a very important game for Mainz as they try to get clear of the relegation playoff spot. They get off to a perfect start when Jonathan Burkhardt would redirect a cross to the back of the net, putting them up after 36 minutes. But Hoffenheim would turn off the pressure in the second half, looking for an equalizer. It would come in the 65th minute when Tim Kleidens would convert the cross, tying the game at 1, and that's how it would end. Like I said, Mainz would have preferred the 3 points, but still getting 1 is something. Which brings us to the Bundesliga table. Obviously, our Bundesliga title winners Leverkusen sit atop the table, still unbeaten in the German top division in their 32 matches. 26 wins, 6 draws, and as I said, they're now 48 unbeaten across all competitions. Bayern Munich still sitting second in the league, but barely. Their 69 points have them just 2 ahead of third place Stuttgart, who made up some huge ground with that 3-1 win over Bayern this past weekend. Leipzig clinging to that 4th spot with 63 points, with Dortmund just 3 points behind them in the 5th spot. Looking at the other side of the table, we know bottom of the table, Darmstadt is getting relegated. Cologne has a slight chance of avoiding relegation. It's not looking too good with their 24 points. If they lose either of their last 2 fixtures, they're 100% going down. However, if they win out and get some help, like I said, slim chance of surviving. I mentioned Mainz, they're 16th. They're in the relegation spot with 29 points, with a potential for 6 points available if they win out. That keeps clubs from 13th to 15th in the mix. So Mönchengladbach, Bochum, they have 33. They're close to clinching another season in the league, while Union Berlin are just 1 point ahead of Mainz. They're winless in their last 6, so this could come down to one of those teams battling it out to try to stay in the top division next year. Heading on a plane to Spain for La Liga, Getafe hosted Athletic Bilbao to kick off the weekend. Inaki Williams scored just 21 minutes into the match with a wonder strike. Inaki would get his brace in the 51st minute, getting set up by brother Nico Williams. That goal made it 2-0 for the visitors. Getafe was ramping up the pressure and tried to get it back. But then Bilbao's Jorge Alvarez came in with a harsh tackle, straight red. It would be them going down to 10 men, which gave Getafe even more of a chance. And they'd get an even bigger opportunity when Aitor Paredes would take a Getafe player down again, his second yellow card. And they'd have to play the last 11 minutes with 9 players, but Athletic Bilbao held up. Getafe had 9 shots on target. None of them could beat Unai Simon. The Bilbao keeper played well, keeping a clean sheet, just like I said, despite finishing with 2 men down. Real Sociedad hosted a struggling Las Palmas side, and difficult ball into the box was tough to deal with, and it turned into an Alex Suarez own goal, and Real Sociedad got the lead. They'd keep the pressure on and add a second in the first half stoppage time when Becker would blast it home to make it 2-0. That goal hurt even more because just minutes prior, Las Palmas had an excellent chance to equalize and was denied by Sociedad keeper Alex Romero. Those 2 first half goals were enough to give Real Sociedad the 2-0 win, and for Las Palmas, it's their 10th loss in a row now in La Liga. That's an ouchers. After a scoreless first half, Brahim Diaz would curl an absolute gem into the top corner, giving Real Madrid the 1-0 lead in their match with Cadiz. Real Madrid would double their lead only 2 minutes into being substituted into the match. Jude Bellingham would find in the back of the net. And then a bad Cadiz pass would right to Madrid, where Modric found the Englishman who put Madrid up 2-0. That was the second goal there. Late in stoppage time, Real Madrid would show off more of their brilliance. A huge save from their keeper, Thibaut Courtois, who was making his first start since tearing his ACL back in August. This led to an immediate counterattack, and some unselfish passing found Nacho finding Joselu, who'd get the tap in, secure the 3-0 win in front of fans at the Bernabeu. And if Barcelona failed to get a win against Girona, Real Madrid would clinch the La Liga championship. We might as well jump to that game next. And that game I was alluding to, Girona hosting Barcelona. The visitors would open the scoring when Andreas Christensen looked like a striker controlling the ball and putting it into the corner. Barcelona leading 1-0 after 3 minutes. But Girona immediately responded, like right off the kickoff, send it deep. Dovbik's header would find the back of the net. They were tied up at 1 just a minute after the first goal. But Barcelona would get the lead again before the halftime whistle. A foul close to the box was looked at by VAR, and a penalty was given where Robert Lewandowski would step up to make it 2-1 Barcelona. And Roberto would have had terrible back pass to the keeper that didn't have the proper weight on it, where Dovbyk would find it and find Girona substitute Porto, who had just got substituted onto the net, tying the game up at 2. And then not even 2 minutes later, Girona turned the game on its head. A giveaway led to Girona going right on the attack, and Miguel's shot was deflected on its way to the net, giving Girona the 3-2 lead and putting Real Madrid's hands closer to that trophy. Then substitute Porto got his second of the match for Girona, an absolute wonder volley, hit the post and went in, putting Girona up 4-2 in the 75th minute, and that's how it would end. And that's how Real Madrid would clinch the La Liga title. And for Girona, they were ecstatic as they've clinched Champions League play next season. From 10th last year to Champions League play this season, amazing season for Girona. Mallorca were hosting Atletico Madrid with 2 teams on different ends of the table. Rodrigo Riquelme would show off an absurd turn before blasting it home, putting Atletico up 1-0 after 4 minutes. The shot stunned Mallorca keeper Rakovic, who just kind of watched it go in. If you missed that early goal, you probably didn't need to see the rest of the match, as Mallorca looked to equalize, but it never came. Big 1-0 win for Atletico Madrid. Osasuna hosted Real Betis, and they were hurting for a win, losers of their last 3 coming in. They didn't help themselves when John Macaiola went to meet the ball in the air with his foot, but instead kicked the Real Betis player in the head. He was given a straight red for this karate move, and it would totally change the game, shifting momentum for the Real Betis, and they'd take advantage. Perez would show off how to properly volley a ball without kicking another player, and he'd score, make it 1-0 after 41 minutes. And minutes later, in first half stoppage time, former West Ham man Pablo Fornals would finish to make it 2-0 Real Betis. No goals in the second half as Real Betis take the 2-0 win. Osasuna pick up their fourth loss in a row in La Liga. Celta Vigo hosted Villarreal and were looking for any points to try and space themselves from the drop zone. They did not get the start they were looking for when Albert Moreno would get his shot teed up and he blasted it in the net, giving Villarreal the 1-0 lead after 12 minutes. And then 5 minutes later, the game would get changed when Villarreal's Santi Camasana would come in with a very violent tackle. Initially, it was yellow, but VAR was like, nah, son, that's a red. So Villarreal would have to play the last 73 minutes of the match a man down. Minutes later, Iago Aspas would get taken down in the box. Celta Vigo would get a penalty chance, where Aspas would convert from the spot, tying him up at 1. And then the 39th minute, Celta Vigo would take the lead for the first time when Jorgen Strand Larsen would head the ball in the net. And then in the 65th minute, 10-man side Villarreal would find Gonçalo Guedes, and he'd blast a rock in the net, tying the game up at 2. Then in the 82nd minute, we'd get a game winner. De Vicus would finish across to put Celta Vigo up again, and they'd hold on for the massive 3-2 win. Valencia hosted Alaves in a big matchup, and this game stayed scoreless until the 68th minute. Then from a corner kick, Javi Lopez would come slithering in and find himself unmarked, where he'd redirect the corner kick into the back of the net, giving Alaves the 1-0 lead, where they'd hold on to take the win over Valencia. Third straight win for Alaves as Valencia dropped their third straight. Rayo Vallecano hosted bottom of the table side Almeria, and the home side was trying a long throw-in and miscalculated it, leading to Almeria going on the counter where Anthony Lozano would fire at home, putting Almeria up 1-0 after 30 minutes. And they'd hold on, pulling up the 1-0 road win after losing their previous 4. The last match of La Liga weekend featured Sevilla hosting Granada. The home side would open the scoring 11 minutes in, with Marcos Acuna heading the ball into the back of the net. The game would stay that way until the 51st minute, where Moroccan Youssef and Nezri would finish a nicely built-up goal, doubling Sevilla's lead. Dodi Lobiaco would show off dancing move before curling his into the net, giving Sevilla the 3-0 home win. So that takes us to the Liga table. I mentioned how the outcome of those two big matches gave us a champion, so congrats are in order for Real Madrid, winning the Spanish top division for the 36th time. They have the most titles in Spain, with 9 more than Barcelona. Girona's 4th win in 5 matches propelled them in the 2nd place over Barcelona, that 4-2 win, putting them 1 point above Barca. Atletico Madrid sit in the 4th spot, 6 points behind Barcelona, but 6 points ahead of Athletic Bilbao, who are still trying to sneak in there. Go to the bottom of the table where Almeria is getting relegated. 19th place Granada has a very slim chance, but it's not looking good. They need to win out and have teams above them lose out. Cadiz at 26 points has a legit chance of getting out of 18th place with 4 games to go. They trail 17th place Mallorca by 6 and Celta Vigo and Rayo Vallecano by 8. Which brings us to Italy next for the Serie A. Torino hosting Bologna. A fairly even match that had each team only get 1 attempted shot on target. Bologna looked more likely to score, but they couldn't find it, and that game would end in a scoreless draw. Monza hosted Lazio in an exciting match. Lazio's Daichi Kamada unleashed a rocket from distance. It was saved, but Lazio's Ciro Immobile was the first to the ball, giving the visitors a 1-0 lead after 11 minutes. Later in the match, some complacency near the half line led to Monza dispossessing Lazio. Monza's shot would get stopped, but Milan Duric pounced on the rebound to score. It was called offside, but VAR determined it was good, and the game was tied at 1 after 73 minutes. It would be Monza's time to give away the ball in their own end, and Vecino would finish for Lazio, putting Lazio up for the second time in the match. But then in stoppage time, Monza would crank up the pressure, and Duric would get his second of the match. A towering header tied the game in stoppage time, and it's in back-to-back weeks now. Monza has equalized in stoppage time to secure a point. A game that featured plenty of chances, but the 2-2 result seems fair. Sassuolo have been in a relegation gauntlet trying to avoid dropping the Serie B, and things didn't look to get easier for them as they were matched up against Serie A champions Inter Milan. And Inter Milan dominated possession, but in the 20th minute, minutes, some Sassuolo pressure led to an Armand Loriente goal. He smashed the ball into the back of the net, surprising the visitors. And despite Inter having 76% of the ball, they could not get an equalizer. Sassuolo picked up a big 1-0 home win. They've had a tough season, but they've had Inter's number. The title winners have now lost twice this season to Sassuolo. Crazy. They just have their number, I guess. Cagliari hosted Lecce in a battle of teams trying to avoid dealing with the relegation spots. Lecce looked to bring it out of their own end, but lost the ball, and Diola tried a shot from distance, taking a nasty deflection, leaving the goalie standing still as the ball went in. However, he used his hand to control the ball, and VAR disallowed it, but soon after, Cagliari's corner kick would lead to Mina scoring, and that one counted. They were up 1-0 after 25 minutes, but just before halftime, Gianluca Gaetano would go in for a rough tackle, and the Cagliari player was issued a yellow, but it was upgraded to a red, dismissing him from the match. And Cagliari battled despite having one less player, and in the 84th minute, Lecce would finally find their equalizer. Kristovic would convert a cross, putting it in, tying the game at 1, which is how it would finish. Verona hosted Fiorentina early into the match. Some miscommunication between the defense and keeper led to a foul in the box, giving Verona captain Lazovic a chance from the penalty spot. He'd score, giving them the lead 13 minutes in. And after some passing, Fiorentina's Castrovilli found himself in the box where he'd bury a shot, tying the game at 1, lead going into halftime. The second half, Fiorentina had more of the ball, and in the 59th minute, a cross to the box wasn't handled ideally. Tiana Nosland blasted the ball into the net, giving Verona the lead. Like I said, despite having less of the possession, and they take the 2-1 win. AC Milan was hosting Genoa, and early into the match, Genoa would go on the attack, leading to a penalty chance. Ruregui would blast it home, giving Genoa the 1-0 lead. And just before the 45-minute mark, an AC Milan cross in the box was met by Florenzi. He tied up at 1 going into halftime. The visitors would start the second half much like the first and get a goal not even 3 minutes in when Ekuban would meet a cross. Genoa would lead 2-1. Then the 72nd minute, AC Milan would equalize from a corner when Gabbia rose above the rest to head it in. And it wasn't tied very long. Not even 3 minutes later, Milan would take their first lead of the game when Pulisic would find Olivier Giroud, who would head the ball home, giving AC Milan a 3-2 lead. And after they were down 2-1 just minutes prior, AC Milan looked poised to take the comeback win. However, Genoa wasn't finished. They'd go on a late attack and a low cross pinballed before finding the back of the net. Thiago was credited with the own goal in the 87th minute, and this match would end 3-3. Roma hosted Juventus in a highly anticipated match, and the home side would go on the attack, forcing a save, and Lukaku would be in the right place at the right time, scoring the rebound, putting Roma up 1-0 after 50 minutes. Juventus would equalize in the 31st when Chiesa would cross one end to Bremer, who'd meet it with his head, tying the game at 1 after 31 minutes. And Roma applied more pressure and looked to score. They just couldn't get it. Juventus had some big saves forced by the Roma keeper, but despite these chances, this game ended at 1-1. Bottom of the table side, Salernitana was hosting Atalanta. Perhaps Atlanta's mind was elsewhere on their European bouts, maybe, because the hosts would go ahead first when Chauna would find the back of the net, giving Salernitana the lead after 18 minutes. Atalanta would crank the pressure up, finding the equalizer in the 57th minute when Samaka, who just cannot stop scoring for them, would score, tying it up. And then not even 6 minutes later, Atalanta would have a corner kick, and it looked like Salernitana was going to break out, but they forgot the ball, and it landed the Coop Miners, who curled his shot in, giving Atalanta their first lead of the match, and they'd hold on to win 2-1, extending their Serie A winning streak to 3 games. Udinese hosted Napoli to end the week here, and after a scoreless first half, we'd get a goal in the second frame. Victor Osimhen would show off the power when he delivered a header that found the back of the net, giving Napoli the 1-0 lead after 51 minutes. Osimhen looked to get his second of the match, but VAR determined it was offside. And that was big, because in stoppage time, Udinese was throwing everything, including the kitchen sink, and they'd finally get their equalizing goal. Isaac Success would find success in hitting the back of the net, substitute tying the game in the 92nd minute, salvaging a point for Udinese, who needs every point they can get right now. So I'll take us to the Serie A table. Despite Inter Milan's surprise defeat, they still sit atop the league as Serie A champions. AC Milan sit alone in second place with 71 points. Juventus in third place with 66, but Bologna just 2 points behind them in fourth. And look out for Atalanta and Roma, both teams at 60 points, with Atalanta having a slightly better goal differential. Looking at the bottom of the table, we know struggling Salernitana is getting relegated despite their great effort this past weekend. The other two spots are still up for grabs. Sassuolo sitting 19th with 29. Udinese sitting 18th with 30. So technically, teams 13 to 17 are all in danger of potentially falling into those last relegation spots. Lecce, Verona, Cagliari, Frosinone, and Empoli cannot all sleep at night knowing they're safe. So things can change in these last few games. Every game is that much more important. Wrapping up the European play here with the French top division, Ligue 1, you had Toulouse hosting Montpellier. Visitors would go ahead in the 27th minute from a wonderful volley by Savanier, only for Toulouse to equalize just 7 minutes later from a Delinga header. The game got turned up a bit when Montpellier goal scorer Savanier would get a straight red card for the softest of contact. There was a big dive there. Visitors went down to 10 men, and some atrocious defending by Toulouse led to Khalil Faïd scoring in the 81st minute, putting Montpellier up for the second time in the match. Toulouse would go a man down, and when Nicolaisen would pick up his second yellow card, but huge 2-1 win for Montpellier. Lens hosted a struggling Lorient side, and after a scoreless first half, we get the first goal of the game in the 57th minute. A ghastly giveaway by Lorient led to Wifey scoring, and then Lens would add a second in the 81st through David Costa. Easy 2-0 win for Lens. And Lorient, they've lost 6 in a row and have not picked up a win since February 18th. That's wild. Le Havre hosted Strasbourg in a match involving two relegation battling teams. The home side would open the scoring through a header by Kekta in the 24th minute. Then we get another goal via a header by Kekta in the 65th. His second in the match put the side up 2-0. Later in the match, Gilbert would get one back via a corner in the 86th. But that would be answered by a Le Havre Andre Ayew goal, who iced the game in stoppage time. Big 3-1 win for Le Havre. Two teams on the opposite side of the French top division met up. Monaco hosted Clermont-Foot. Monaco got an early goal from former Liverpool man Minamino. Mohamed Cham would get one back for the visitors in the 34th, but it didn't last long. 3 minutes later, Mbolo would put Monaco up. Then Wissam Ben Yedder would get a second half brace, goals in the 57th and 87th to ice the game for Monaco. Big 4-1 win at home for them. Excuse me. A big match took place between Metz and Rennes. The home side would get off to a great start when the on-fire striker Mikadze would open the scoring with a wonderful chip. Short-lived, though, as Amin Guerri's shot managed to sneak into the net, tying the game at 1 after 23 minutes. Just before halftime, Metz would grab the lead again when Diallo would score. The second half, Rennes would get rewarded a very soft penalty. It looked like a dive, but it stood. Benjamin Beauregard would step up and convert from the spot, tying the game up at 2. The game looked destined for a tie, but then Arnaud Kelamindo would go on and finish on a counterattack, giving Rennes their first lead in the match. And things would get worse for Metz when their goal scorer, Makatatse, would get a straight red card. Tough loss for Metz, who led on 2 different occasions, but still managed to lose 3-2. Brestois hosted Nantes, and despite having 72% of the ball, nobody would find the net. Nantes had a few chances, but nothing, and that game would end in a scoreless draw. The last game of the Ligue on weekend was probably the best of the bunch. Lille hosting Lyon. Lille would open the scoring from a free kick when they crossed in the box met Diakite, whose header beat the keeper. Idon Zagrova would try a shot from outside the box, and his shot would beat the keeper, giving Lille 2-0 lead after 37 minutes. Former West Ham man Saïd Benrahma would get one back for Lyon in the 65th. In the 82nd, Lyon would equalize when Fofana would outrun the group and get to the ball first, tying the game at 2. And just 3 minutes from Lille would take their lead back when Diakite would get his second goal of the game from a corner, making it 3-2. But then another 3 minutes, another goal. Former Arsenal man Alexander Lacazette would score to tie things up. And in stoppage time, we would get a winner. Mama Balde would meet across with a powerful header and beat the keeper to give Lyon their first lead of the game. A massive win for them as they end up winning 4-3. So we'll look at the table. Obviously, PSG is this Division 1. Monaco sit in second place, 9 points behind the leader. Brestois 4 points behind Monaco in third place for that last Champions League spot. They only have 3 in the French League. Lille are 2 points back, sitting in fourth as they try to move into that spot. Looking at the bottom of the table, Clermont-Foot sit in 18th with 25. Lorient, free falling, sit in 17th with just 1 more point than Clermont-Foot. Metz sit in that relegation playoff spot with 29 points. 14th place Nantes, 15th place Le Havre, are all still in reach here, so every match is important coming down the stretch. Going to the Major League Baseball, where teams are still trying to find out who they are this season. The Blue Jays are definitely suffering from identity crisis, or I'm hoping this isn't who they really are. As of last episode, the Jays and Royals each had one game in that series in Toronto. Kansas City would beat the Jays 6-1 to take 2 out of 3 against the Jays. The Jays would then go to the American capital to take on the Nationals, where they dropped 2 of 3 to Washington. The series finale in that one had Alek Manoah returning to the mound for the Jays. His outing did not go so well. He'd go 4 innings, allowing 6 hits, 6 earned runs, and 4 runs, or 4 walks. I mean, 6 strikeouts, but the rest of that's not very good. The Jays' bats actually woke up, produced 5 runs in that second inning just to lose that one. And you have to question, is Manoah really going to make it in Toronto? Like, he's improved in the minor leagues, but in Toronto, it's been a struggle. It's got to be mental here. Like, I imagine he can still be a productive pitcher in this league, just maybe not in Toronto colors. Maybe I'm wrong here, but the Jays had yesterday off, but they have a 2-game stand with the Phillies to make more interleague play before the Jays head home to host the Minnesota Twins in a 3-game series. Looking at the AL East, the Jays are the only team under 500 sitting in last place in the division. Their recent struggles combined with that tough division can really have them in a hard place. They need to bounce back this week. The Orioles have a slight lead over the Yankees in the division. The Red Sox just above 500, while Tampa Bay sits at 500, 18-18. The Cleveland Guardians still lead the AL Central, but the Twins have been on a tear lately and been sneaking up the standings. Kansas City Royals are right there with those teams I mentioned, also above 20 wins for the season. Tigers are playing well above 500 as well. And the Chicago White Sox still in the basement of that division with only 8 wins of the season. Although 5 of those 8 wins have come in their last 10, so that's saying something for the White Sox. We'll wrap up the American League going out west, a division that has not produced as many wins as you were expecting. Some teams have really played a little better as of late, like division-leading Texan Rangers. They have a slight lead over the Mariners. The other 3 teams in that division are under 500. The Athletics are close to that 500 mark, while the Astros and Angels each just 12 wins on the season. The Astros seem to be trending up at least, while the Angels, they're just doing what the Angels do. Questioning why have things gotten better with an injured Mike Trout and a former MVP who's lighting it up in your city with another team, which is a nice segue to that team. We'll go to the NL, National League, go to the West, the division-leading LA Dodgers. And these Dodgers, much like Stella, they found their groove, and former Angel Shohei Ohtani is leading the major league in home runs and batting average. Second in batting average, Ohtani's teammate Mookie Betts. This team looks like a custom roster in a video game, and they're playing like it now. Scary for any opponents out there. The Padres are at 500, while the rest of the division has struggled. But the Padres are hoping to move up the standings soon. They made a big splash with a trade, acquiring elite hitter Luis Arraez from the Miami Marlins, in a package that includes 3 prospects and a relief pitcher. So these are the kind of moves you have to make to try to stick with the Dodgers. The Diamondbacks and Giants are neck and neck in the standings, while the lowly Colorado Rockies sit in the basement of that division with just 8 wins on the season. Going to the NL Central, the Milwaukee Brewers have a slight division lead over the Chicago Cubs, and it's a really cool moment in that Rays-Brewers game. Tyler Black has been lighting it up in AAA and got the call-up for the Brewers. He picked up his professional hit, and who called that hit from the stands? None other than his dad, Canadian icon Rod Black, the voice of so many big moments in sports in Canada. And he made probably the biggest call of his career, calling his son's first hit from the stand. You could hear the pride in his voice. I tagged him in a story on Instagram, and he replied to it. I totally fanboyed over it and screenshot that bad boy. Such a cool moment. Just one of those things in sports that lights you up when you see it. Told Rod Black, I'm still a Blue Jays guy, but I have a soft spot for the Brewers now. The Pirates and Reds are around 500 in that division, with the St. Louis Cardinals living in the basement at the moment. The NL East is led by the on-fire Phillies. Good luck with them, Toronto. They have been playing great and have moved into sole possession of the division. The Braves have faltered a bit, sitting second in the division. And the Nationals have played pretty good of late, and they find themselves just above the Mets in the division, both teams around 500. The Miami Marlins sitting in the division basement, but they have at least hit the double-digit mark on wins this season. So that'll bring us to some Formula One. We were back with some F1 in Miami.
We had a sprint. Magnuson picked up a 10-second penalty for leaving the track, which Lewis Hamilton was very vocal about. Magnuson was almost setting up a block again, like he's done before, so his teammate Hulkenborg could get a bigger gap. This caused all kinds of battle where Yuki would pass Hamilton. Hamilton would have to get the spot back. Magnuson would pick up another 10-second penalty, his second of the sprint. And it was cool to see Daniel Ricciardo up there in the fourth spot. He held off Ferrari's Carlos Sainz to finish up there. Not used to seeing Ricciardo finish that high in the races lately. Max Verstappen, of course, won the sprint. Charles Leclerc and Ferrari splitting the two Red Bulls while Perez rounded out the podium. But the big race went down Sunday, and we didn't have your normal finish that we always see lately. We had a different winner. Lando Norris of McLaren won his first ever F1 race, the 21st UK driver to win an F1 race. 110 starts, 15 podiums later. He snags his first win. He's my favorite driver. He comes from Glastonbury, near where my mom was born, so it's always pumped to see him do well. It was a bit of luck, too, as he took a pit stop. A yellow flag occurred, helping him keep that number one spot. Red Bull's Max Verstappen felt out of sorts, I imagine. He had won 4 or 5 races coming in, and Charles Leclerc rounded out the podium with Ferrari taking third. Sergio Perez of Red Bull fourth, while the other Ferrari Sainz finished fifth. Some big boxing on the weekend. You had the Cinco de Mayo boxing match between some Mexican stars. Canelo Alvarez taking on Yambe Munguia. Went down over the weekend. It looked like a fairly even fight early, but then Canelo reminded everyone why he's got 4 belts, putting his will on his fellow compatriot. It's the first defeat in one guy's professional career, putting him at 43-1. This went to the cards, and Canelo easily won by decision, putting his record to 61-2-2. So after another title defense for Canelo, who's next? It would be something else. If it could be David Benavidez, this would be a good fight. That's the one my buddy Todd's been hoping for forever. Or maybe Canelo wants to go for the box office money and try to set something up with Terrence Crawford. You know, there'd be eyes on that one. Time will tell, but for now, Canelo just proving that he's still one of the real deals out there. There's some other big fights on those cards. You had Barrios defeating Maidana by a unanimous decision to retain his belt. Figueroa, he would take down Magdaleno that put him down for good in the 9th round as he retained his featherweight title. Imantas Sionis defeat Gabriel Maestra by unanimous decision. It was his first match in 2 years, so good on him. And Jesus Ramos Jr., he stopped the fight with Johan Gonzalez with a 9th round knockout. Good fights on a card with Canelo lighting it up in the main. Fanciest horse race of the year went down over the weekend. The famous Kentucky Derby had its 150th race, and it was a wild one. A 3-horse photo finish, the tightest race since 1996. Mystic Dan would end up taking the win, edging out Sierra Leone by a literal nose, with Forever Young in the 3rd spot. Just the 10th Kentucky Derby decided by a nose, and there were a lot of people there, 156,000 people in attendance to watch. I don't normally watch horse racing. This is one I always check out. A quick golf mention. Richmond Hill, Ontario native Taylor Pendrith picked up his first PGA Tour victory, winning the CJ Cup. Byron Nelson, congrats to him. WNBA preseason, just a quick mention here. There has not been so much hype surrounding this ever WNBA preseason. And it's great seeing some of these rookies do their thing. Obviously, Caitlin Clark. You got the Sparks duo of Brink and Jackson, Skies duo Reese Cardoso. But I don't think people realize how small this league is roster-wise. So some of these great rookies might actually get cut. Maybe not any of the people I mentioned, but some of those darlings in the 2nd round may be getting cut. We'll see. Or maybe we'll see some good vets get cut. There's only so many spots. But some vets reminding us, like that battle between the Fever and the Wings. Ariki Egbonwale, I've talked her up on the show. She's probably my favorite WNBA player for the Dallas Wings. She hit the game winner in that game over the Fever. Just saying, chill out, young blood. But lots of big excitement for this season. I'll probably get WNBA League Pass with that regular season starting a week away. So like I said, a crazy week in sports. And we'll go from the sports to the shorts. This episode, I thought, since I'm recording on my wife Caitlin's birthday, I thought I'll bring it full circle here. We'll be together 10 years as of next week. It's wild. Wonderful trip planned later this month where you might see some of us on our socials at a Blue Jays game. We've been through it all, like my lack of dexterity during a drunk moment, resulting in us trying to do a dance move and me dropping my wife where she chipped her tooth, or the moments when she's locked my keys in the car, or if I've locked our keys in the car hole. humbling moments where it results in arguments and makeups. And I think every couple's had that where afterwards, you come up to each other sheepishly and apologize because what you were arguing about was just so stupid. It happens once in a while, but we work it out. And I've never been in a relationship where I've talked as much to work through things. So it's been great to grow with someone you love. If I could stop growing horizontally, that'd be something. But yeah, Caitlin's held me down. After I had my car written off, I talked about on this show getting T-boned by some mook named Barrington. So she helped bring me to school for plumbing at Polytech. After ACL reconstruction surgery, she shuttled me around, helping me big time. I don't know what I would have done. It's a growing experience as a couple, too, because if you ever tried to get onto a toilet where you cannot bend your leg, it's something else. Real, relationship building there. And then when I had my license medically suspended, when they thought I was having seizures, or she was driving around, driving Miss Rennie, taking me where I needed to go, helping my mom when she had her broken leg. That could be a story too, the whole leg broken incident. I'll see if my mom's cool with that one. But man, I'm a lucky dude. So many wonderful memories with Caitlin, and the best thing is we get to make many more. So I guess I turned this short basically to do a happy birthday for my wife. Happy birthday, Caitlin. But hey, as writer, producer, and content creator of the show, I'll allow it. But hey, thanks for tuning in. This episode 61 in the books. Plenty of more craziness to come up in this sports week. Hockey playoffs are bananas. If you're like, Ren City, where's the NBA playoffs? You didn't get there. There's a whole podcast of the NBA playoffs. Check it out on my NBA or my YouTube page. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, we're doing it all. Ren City coming at you. Loving it. Sports and shorts of sorts. Episode 61. Thanks for coming out. Ren City out.